Okay, we're live. Happy New Year!
Happy New Year!
I'm Greg Pelican. We're at Trek Naples, and this is the third installment of our Pan Florida Challenge. And today's topic is training tools, tips, the rides that we're going to be doing to help you get there, and the clinics that we're doing. And we have two great guests here. First,
Hi, I'm Rob Vigorino. I'm the ride director for Pan Florida 2019 and been doing it now, actually, this is our 5th year.
awesome.
And I'm Jerry Getz, Executive Director of the Pan Florida Challenge, work on both the ride and our mission to feed hungry kids in Florida. I'm going to leave the camera to these two gentlemen. Please ask your questions on Facebook and we will answer them from the floor. Thanks, everyone.
So just so you know, we call him Vigo. So if you're on the Pan Florida Challenge and you see him out there, just say, hey, Vigo, I need some help, I need this, whatever. He's a great ride director and lots of experience. Basically, this is the perfect time of year where we're trying to set goals and reach, right? And the Pan Florida Challenge is one of those things I think would be fantastic for you. Like if you've never done 100 miles on a bike, well, why not make it a goal and you help hungry kids and you reach your goal? And we're here today to talk about how to reach those goals. But why don't you text in, not text in, but why don't you Facebook in, like what is your goal for this year? What are your goals? And it could be Pan Florida Challenge, it could be other goals, it could be other cycling goals. We'd love to hear that. And the main thing is if you have a goal like this, you have to train. There's lots of training involved. There's lots of techniques. And so if you were going to ride 100 miles, how many hours would you train a week, roughly, if you've never done it before?
Well, I think the key first is to assess where your fitness level is before you start.
Good point.
If you're starting from a point where you've been a couch potato for a long time and maybe you wanted to get fitter, whether it was swimming, biking, running, hiking, whatever, walking, you need to start and assess where you are to begin with. As far as riding 100 miles, for many that may seem a very strenuous, difficult, impossible task. So you want to break it up. Start off with riding 10 and then 20 and then 30. The key is consistency and time on the bike. That's
awesome.
Really the point.
So some of the things we have to think about, and we talked about in the first presentation, is having the right bike. The second presentation was being fit correctly and being comfortable on the bike. And this presentation is really like some of the tools you need to train that will help you train, and then some of the training that you're going to do. So before we get much further though, I want to kind of emphasize that safety is a big prerequisite. And so you absolutely should be using lights all the time, daylight running lights on the front and the rear. And another thing is if you're going to be doing group riding where there's pace line and you're in a narrow bike lane, like bike handling skills and pack riding skills are essential. And we're going to be running some clinics to help you do that. So if you're new to that, and you're fine riding yourself, but you haven't really run in a pace line or in a big group, I think it's good to do that sort of thing before you get out there on a big organized event ride.
Greg, you're spot on. I think more often people, especially when they're starting out riding, they might ride in their neighborhood and they're just riding solo at whatever pace they're riding. But they're not necessarily aware of the fact that there's cars always everywhere coming and going. Not every lane has a bike lane. So yeah, if you're not used to riding in a group, either in a pace line, one behind the other, or in a group, just a group in general, you need to communicate with each other, point out debris in the road, point out potholes in the road, point out even if the wind changes or where to ride, and let people know if you're going to make a right-hand turn, a left-hand turn, a stop sign. Because at the end of the day, all it takes is one weak link in this, quote, chain of riders for an incident to occur. So you're spot on in that regard. You need to get used to the idea that in the Pan Florida event, whether you're riding the 10-mile or the 100-mile or the 200-mile ride, there's going to be groups of riders. And you need to understand the etiquette and the composition of the group and how it all works together as a team to benefit everybody in the ride.
You have a question, Jared?
Scott Hickey asked, any more information on the upcoming training rides? Thanks.
Yeah, Scott, great question. We're going to be having, starting this month, both from the Trek store and from the park, North Collier Regional. They'll be on our website. We'll be having training rides starting at the 30-mile distance. And again, they're training rides. They're not meant to be rides where we get out there and hammer, so to speak. We want to get people used to the idea of riding in a group, riding at a certain pace, learning when to drink, when to eat, if necessary, etc. So that'll be starting this month.
We also have a question. What are the hand signals used in a group ride?
That's a good question. So a lot of times, if you're in a pace line, the most common thing is if you're at the pace line, you're rotating off the front. And when you want to rotate off the front, basically the real hardcore pro way is you flick your elbow on the side you want the riders to come by, so you're coming off to the other side. Some people put their hand on their butt. It's a little bit more obvious. So before you move over, in case you're overlapping the wheel, you do that. And then, of course, we are supposed to act like cars. So what do you do on the traffic signals? I usually just point where we're going,
exactly.
so everybody knows. I mean,
yeah, you can't talk too much in a ride, especially when you come to a traffic stop, come to a caution area, railroad tracks, debris in the road. It's easy to shout, point, be animated with your hands, because all it takes is someone not paying attention. And let's say you're in 5, 6, 8 people in a line. If the first 2 people acknowledge that there's something in the road, or you're going to make a turn, and someone is not paying attention or observant enough, then you have a situation where you could have an overlap of wheels, and then of course there's a fall.
So the whole thing with communication really is, it's better be safe than sorry. So, you know, be obvious, help each other out. You're out there as a team looking out for each other. And that's some of the things, there's just like a bond and a trust that happens in cycling that doesn't happen in a lot of sports. And I think it's a pretty cool thing, actually. So some of the training tools, of course, we all have our Garmin or whatever, and I'm going to talk about some of those things as a new cyclist you should be focused on. So of course there's speed and there's your time of ride. I think the most simplest thing is, whether you're cycling or you're running, is to look at the duration of what you're doing. If you eventually have an event that you think is going to take 5 hours, you have to build up your endurance gradually. And the rule of thumb for endurance sports is what, 15% increase per week.
10 to 15. Yeah.
So you don't just like do 50 miles long ride one week and do 100 the next. So you have to kind of build yourself up, or you're potentially going to get a setback or get an injury. So of course we're looking at speed, and we're looking at the time on the bike and the mileage that we do, but really focus on how long you're actually riding. Another big factor is, I think, really great for a new cyclist is cadence. So cadence is RPMs, and a lot of new cyclists, do this. They kind of like want to be in the hardest gear they can and just grind it out, you know, just really, that's it, you know, I'm strong. That doesn't last too long, unfortunately. So if you look at any pro cyclists, they're like on a sewing machine. So they're about something like this, about 85 RPM. Now, I've been riding a long time. I know what 85 RPMs is. I look at the data all the time. But you can get a computer to monitor cadence. And basically what it's doing is it's actually counting the revolutions of the crank or as it goes by. So you want to be between 80 and 90 RPMs all the time. Another factor, and we could look at this a little bit, is power. So power is really just, if you think of horsepower, like 1 horsepower, a human can't put out as much of a horse as a horse, so we could do about a half or a third of a horsepower. So we look at it in wattage. So if we were doing 200 watts, that's like 200, we could light up two 100-watt light bulbs. So we can track how hard our effort is. And this is a little bit more expensive. So these are done by strain gauges, and it could be in the pedal, it could be in the crank, it could be in the wheel. But this is getting more and more common as a training tool. And I'm going to show you how we use some of these things together in some of the cool apps that we have. Another, and this is probably less expensive and easy to use, is heart rate. So our engine, our heart can only go so high. Mine can go 193, which is pretty high, but I'm really suffering when I'm about 180 and above. So I know in long rides, I'm going to try to be like kind of in the 160, 155 range. And if I was in a short race, I'd be like in the 175 range. So we can set up zones and training zones for heart rate. We could do it for power. And these are all good tools to use and look at what we're doing. So what is anyone out there using Strava right now? Because Strava is a really good training tool. In fact, it's free, and so you can use Strava and look at all this data. So what I'm going to do
So,
right.
Greg, what is Strava and how do you connect
Yeah.
to it?
So Strava is an app that you can get online. So you could just search Strava, and it basically tracks. So I'm going to show you a Strava file right now. I'm going to click to that. This is actually a ride that I did with Crazy Sue and Kayla, two super fast triathletes I trained with. So we went 82 miles and averaged 21 and a half miles an hour to Ave Maria. So if we look at this file here, this map is actually where we went. You could zoom in on that a little bit. And this is actually the data that's coming out. So if I look at any of these points, so at that moment, we were going 26 miles an hour. I was doing 124 watts, which is nothing, so I was probably coasting, or we had a tailwind. My RPMs were 85, and I didn't have heart rate on. But you could actually zoom in an area of this and look at it even closer, and it shows where that area is on the map. So, and the other thing about this, it looks at all the roads that you're on. You can follow a route. You can save this route to repeat it. And another big thing on the competitive side with Strava, let me see if I can get to the overview, and is that it has all these different, what we call segments. So it's looking at, in this area, this segment that someone created, how fast did you go and how fast were you compared to everybody else? So so these little medals here or whatever, I guess it was my second or third fastest time on that segment. But some people try to win the segments, but you can just use it as a training tool to say, okay, in this 10-mile section, a month later, did I get faster or slower? And you don't have to share this data. You can save it for yourself. Just look at it yourself. You could share it if you want. There's other cool apps called like Training Peaks, but all these are really good tools to look at your training. How many miles did you do a week? How many minutes did you train a week? So it's pretty good technology.
So, Greg, we'll be releasing the Pan Florida Challenge routes fairly soon.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone wanted to upload the 30-mile route, they could upload the route to Strava, the route that we share, and they could actually ride the actual route as practice before our ride in March 30th.
Yeah, absolutely. So when most of the GPS devices, they have turn-by-turn instructions. And even when I do these sort of events, I usually load the file just in case you get lost or whatever. I mean, things happen. You get off track. You're not sure where you are. And even if you're like, you haven't seen anyone in a while, you're like, am I on the right course here? So it is really good tool to like upload these GPS files. And again, yes, you can train on them for sure.
But just to be clear, you don't need a GPS unit to ride in the ride, our ride, because we do mark our course with signs. But it's a nice tool to have as you progress along in the seriousness of your cycling.
Absolutely, and you can get GPS on a phone app, right?
Yep.
And Map My Ride, you can get on your phone. So you don't even need a Garmin to do this, and you can follow the routes on your phone as well. And of course, most of us carry a phone anyway, which is a good thing for safety. Like if you have some sort of issue out there, you can contact someone. And in your routes, if you had a problem mechanical in the actual Pan Florida Challenge, you would have a phone number where people can call, right? And SAG and support. Yeah. So cool. So Vigo, I got a couple questions for you.
Sure.
So what are the ride distances this year for the Pan Florida Challenge?
Okay, we made a little change this year. On Saturday will be the 100-mile ride for the people riding 2 days. We'll leave from the park, we'll ride up to Lake Placid, and then Sunday come back the next 100 for a total of 200.
Yeah, so that kind of eliminates the whole trip back in a bus or whatever
Exactly.
across the state. So I think that's a little easier to take, actually.
Yeah, it's a bit more easy to manage, and we get a lot of feedback from riders.
Yeah.
Oh, if we could do that, that'd be kind of a neat thing. Meet their families back here, and that's when we're planning a nice big party when we come back on Sunday afternoon.
Celebration?
Celebration, yes.
I love it.
Yeah. And on Sunday, between the hours of about 7:30 to about 10, we're going to stagger shorter rides. And there'll be a 10-mile ride, which will be basically in town
Yeah.
here from the park and back. And then a 30-mile ride, a 62-mile ride, and a 100-mile ride.
Yeah.
And they'll all leave at approximately different times throughout the morning. We're trying to get the most riders back early afternoon to meet or come close to meeting the 2-day riders coming back
Yeah.
from Lake Placid. We have the biggest audience. So those rides, the 30, the 62, and the 100, will follow pretty much the same ride
Yeah.
as on Saturday through Lee County, Hendry County, LaBelle, Elva, and basically loop around and come back.
Yeah.
Similar route, come back to the park.
That's excellent. So what are some of the training rides that you have coming up or that you're doing now?
Yeah. For those who don't know, the various bike clubs around town, Naples Velo, for example, has a lot of different rides that anybody can jump in on. But we have a ride that we started a couple years ago on Monday and Thursdays. These are not formal PFC training rides, but they're rides for people in general, because not everybody can say come to North Naples to ride. So we started this ride in East Naples on Monday morning and Thursday morning at 8 o'clock. And we ride pretty much through Lely Resort in that
Yeah.
area and come back out Santa Barbara and loop back. That's on Monday. We start at the Starbucks in the brand new Starbucks on Collier in
Yeah.
Lely Resort. And Thursday from the Starbucks here on Radio Road in Santa Barbara. And they're each 32-mile rides. We usually get anywhere 8 to 12 riders, and the pace is like 17 to 20
Yeah.
with a warm-up. But again, there are ways to build your endurance and build your base,
Yeah.
base miles. And then, of course, a ride a lot of people like is this garage ride that we do on 4th Avenue Garage on 8th Street on
Yeah.
Saturday morning
Yeah.
at 7:30.
That's a Naples Fellow?
Yeah.
Right.
But that's a paced ride.
Yeah.
And again, these are additional rides for people who can't get out and want to do more rides, but they want to ride at a sustained pace, but not at rides that are at a pace
Sure.
that's not possible to really stay up with.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, our training rides that we want to institute here,
Yeah.
that will be initially more training, but also informational, giving tips on techniques and things of that nature.
Yeah.
And those rides are meant to be more paced rides, not rides that are necessarily geared toward any particular speed, but just whatever the group feels comfortable with, we'll do. And those we're going to start in January and continue them through February in
Yeah.
concert with Trek, of course,
Yeah.
and our staff as well.
Yeah, so on January 19th at 7 o'clock here at Trek, so we're going to have a 10-mile ride and also a 30-mile ride. And again, of course, these are like no drop. The idea is to help you in any way we can get comfortable riding, get comfortable with group riding. Now, one of the things that we'd like to offer too is if there's an interest in having a specific group riding clinic where we practice pace lining and stop and talk about it, or we practice cornering or braking, even like shifting, even clipping in like techniques. So there's a lot of things dynamically that happen cycling that when you're new, there's a lot to learn at one time. So having someone who can kind of just show you the ropes and help you through it can maybe, shortcut that learning
That'd
curve.
be great. That'd be awesome. I mean, I think you're exactly right. There's a lot of times people think you just get on a bike, put your feet on the pedals, and you go. But there's a lot of, as you say, dynamics that go on to how do you clip in and clip out. Well, I'm coming to a stop sign. I just got these new clip-in pedals. How do I kick out?
Right.
First time I tried it, I panicked. I said, I can get out of these things. And I went to clip out, and it didn't clip out. And I did a face plant.
Yeah.
So all those things are important. And I think the biggest thing is learning to ride. I know the etiquette, pace riding.
Yeah.
Riding in groups, because if you don't know that etiquette, that's where incidents can occur.
So, like, one of the things that I think maybe there's kind of a misconception on a lot of group rides, you know, it can be sort of almost like a race. That isn't how it should be. It should be your friends, you're helping each other, and you're sharing the workload, and you're sharing it as smoothly and as evenly as you can. And even in pro races, if there's 4 or 5 guys in a break and they're on different teams, that their chances are at least they're going to come in top 4 if the break sticks, right? So they're going to, in that case, they're helping each other, and that's the way cycling is. It's kind of an interesting dynamic to the sport, and that's what, of course, you know, we want to encourage. Yeah.
So we do have some interest from our Facebook audience about the clinic that we
Awesome.
spoke about.
Okay.
Any idea what it might be? And I would say let's come to the January 19th ride and we'll assess interest. And we have a lot of participants who want to do that, then we can set a date for that. But we want to make sure we have a good crowd to attend that.
Yeah, and we certainly have done this sort of thing before for different groups and everything. So we can do it right from Trek Naples here. Saturday mornings are good for us. So whatever works, we'd be happy to do that. Are there any other questions before we get Jerry up? Have a little talk about. Yeah. So again, any of these things where we're gaining fitness in sport, it takes time, right? Patience is in sport. You know, some people work all their life to get, you know, a certain place. So cycling is one of those great sports that it builds on itself, and you can do it for a long, long time and continue to get better, both in skill and finesse, and it's a beautiful thing. So we hope to see you out there, and we hope to help you with that.
Exactly. Thanks, Craig.
Yeah.
So the reason why we do our ride, of course, is to feed the hungry kids in Florida, and it's a hidden epidemic. And I wanted to tell you a couple stories about individual kids we feed. So we feed a kid named Brian. Last year was in kindergarten at South Grade Elementary School in Lake Worth, Florida, other coast of Florida. And he went to his teacher as a kindergarten student and said, "We don't have enough food at home to eat." And that's something we never like to hear. And the teacher said, "We can help." And now Brian, as a first grader, is getting his Power Pack every week, and he's doing well in school. The teachers report that his ability to pay attention has improved, and he's learning at a good pace now that he has guaranteed food at home. I also want to tell you about Jose. Jose last year was a 4th grader at Pinecrest Elementary School out in Immokalee, and we feed hundreds of kids in Immokalee right here in Collier County every week. Jose's home, his trailer, was destroyed by Hurricane Irma last year, and he and his family were living in another trailer, doubling up with another family, and that trailer had been half destroyed. And out of the mouth of an 8-year-old came these words: "It's better to live in half a trailer than no trailer at all." So we ride for Brian, we ride for Jose, and we ride for Katia, a little girl I met in Belle Glade, Florida, whose dad kept forgetting to pick her up at her after-school program, and she said, "That's okay, this is my safe place." So please join us. Any ride length will help feed the hungry kids of Florida. And let's ride for Brian. Let's ride for Jose. Let's ride for Katia. Thanks, everyone. Happy New Year.
Thanks so much for joining us, and we wish you a happy New Year. Let's get all of our goals. Let's reach. Let's help people and make this a beautiful year. Thanks a lot.
Happy New Year.